There once lived a stonecutter who was dissatisfied with his life. One day he passed by a beautiful mansion on his way to work that belonged to a wealthy merchant. He saw delicate possessions, renowned guests, and dozens of servants throughout the estate. He became envious and deeply desired to have everything the wealthy and powerful merchant did. Suddenly, the stonecutter felt himself being swept out of his own body and into the mind of the merchant. He felt the joy of owning all the luxuries that money could buy. He knew the pleasure of holding a respectable position in society. He was honored and envied by many. After a few days of enjoying the merchant's life, he saw a sultan carried in a throne. He was accompanied by attendants, soldiers, and guards. Despite their own power and wealth, everyone in the convoy was obliged to bow before this sultan and worship him. After seeing this, the stonecutter knew he had been mistaken about the merchant's power and status. In an instant, he moved into the body of the sultan. He then knew what it was like to be exalted by a kingdom, to pardon a life, and to be admired by emperors from other lands. One day, while sitting outside, he became increasingly uncomfortable during the heat of a warm summer afternoon. He looked at the sun and considered how it was unaffected by his presence. He then swiftly became the sun, the source of life and strength of every living creature on the planet. He continued to radiate until a massive storm gathered below him, hindering the strength of his rays. The storm then burst into the pouring rain. Seeing this, he became the cloud. He felt the incredible power of its existence as it swept along the sky, flooding everything it wished to. Soon, he realized that the entire root of his power was yet another force, the wind. Without the wind, the strength of the rain was negligible. In a moment, he changed again, blowing off the roofs of houses, uprooting trees, and destroying everything else that came in its way. But then another force strangled his ego, a huge, towering rock. The wind would blow against it with great velocity and force, but the rock would stand firm and immovable. He transformed into the rock and stood tall as a solid, immortal pillar. Then, after a while, he heard a familiar sound and felt a piece of himself being chipped away. As he gazed below, he saw a stonecutter. For most of my time on Earth, I believed the purpose of life was to do what God wanted us to do. I was taught that obedience to God's commandments allowed us to pass the test of life and enjoy eternal life with our Creator. In addition to making good choices, our purpose extended to helping others know about these guidelines for how to live. Almost all of my actions were based on that foundation. As I've shifted away from an affirmative belief in God, I've also distanced myself from this view. While there are many positive aspects of this perspective, for example, it guides you towards making good decisions and helping others, it comes at a cost. When we position life as a test that requires us to do what God expects us to do, the world becomes a proving ground. It's a place filled with temptations to avoid. With this perspective, the world can feel like something to fear, and we can lose confidence in ourselves when we make the kinds of mistakes we all make. In addition, there's an unhealthy reliance on organizations that claim to provide the path required to pass the test, that makes the hurdle of leaving them prohibitively high. After removing my existing definition for the purpose of life, I had to reflect on what a new one ought to be. I considered what it might be if there were no God. If existence ends at death, it's tempting to believe that the purpose of life is to get as much as we can from a world of goods, experiences, and pleasures. As I reflected on this approach, it seemed that if getting were our purpose, we would always be chasing the desire for more goods, better experiences, and greater pleasures. We would end up perpetually craving the next best thing in hopes that it would provide lasting satisfaction. Unfortunately, when getting is our purpose, satisfaction never comes because there's always more to get. When we focus on attaining the most pleasurable things in life, this is particularly true and dangerous. An approach like this makes us feel like a ghost trying to eat, never becoming full and always hungering for more. After eliminating the options of passing a morality test and getting more as contenders for the purpose of life, I came to the conclusion that there's something we can establish as our purpose that provides lasting satisfaction in this life and will serve us well if our actions are ultimately judged by God to determine our eternal fate. Ralph Waldo Emerson provided an excellent description of where I also landed when he said, "The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived, and lived well." With this in mind, I'd like to propose that the purpose of life should be using our natural skills, talents, and abilities to provide value to others. To achieve this aim, work is typically required to improve at whatever we choose to do. This leads to progress and mastery, two powerful outcomes that also fill our tanks of satisfaction. If all we have is this life to live, we can maximize our well-being if we strive to master something useful for others as our purpose. Alternatively, if we do end up being judged for our actions when this life ends, we'll be able to offer a compelling argument to God for a life well lived if we can show that its primary focus was to add value to others. If we don't know what our personal purpose should be, we can find answers from our past. We can evaluate the times we've been most satisfied with what we were doing. We can determine if an interest in something we did was accompanied with natural skill at doing it. If it was, it's a good candidate for serving as our purpose. If something was enjoyable, but we lacked innate abilities to do it well, we may want to make it a hobby. If we were neither good at something nor liked doing it, we should probably avoid it altogether. We need to be careful to not fall into the trap of making our purpose something that we're good at but don't enjoy. This can be necessary for a time, but far too many dedicate their lives to this category. While a focus on being useful generally provides the most meaningful life, it's not the direction the brain always wants to send us in. Our body has systems designed to seek comfort and often wants to avoid the hard work required to provide value to others. It's more easily attracted to things that provide leisure or pleasure. If we're not careful, we can incorrectly interpret the mind's signal to pursue these things as a guidepost for how we should spend most of our time. While leisure and pleasure have their time and place, they are the dessert of life, not the main course. Those who spend too much time chasing them typically end up like children who eat nothing but candy for dinner, feeling sick. In the pursuit of providing value to others, we should keep in mind what we get to choose and what we don't. We don't get to pick our talents, abilities, looks, genes, or environment when we're born. We're given what we're given, and for the most part, the attributes we're given don't change. If we look hard enough, we can all find something about ourselves or our environment that seems undesirable or unfair. However, while we can't control what we're given, we can control what we do with it. We decide whether to fixate on some perceived injustice or to proudly embrace every unique detail of who we are with confidence. Every individual is either the crowning achievement of billions of years of evolution or the creation of a God. This makes each of us incredibly precious and valuable. You have unique talents, abilities, and genes that will make some kind of impact on the world. Choose to be confident in who you are and choose to make your impact a positive one. There are no long-term benefits of seeing yourself as a victim or living with self-loathing. You only get one existence. Stand tall, be confident, be unabashedly your best self. We don't all have to become the greatest in the world at providing something useful, but we should try our hardest to maximize our feelings of satisfaction. It's you against you. We could end up learning the skills of a stonecutter, a caretaker, or a king. Regardless, we should enjoy whatever we dedicate our lives to and find joy in it without succumbing to envy. The value we add may lead to great wealth, or it may just serve an important job that needs to be done by someone. As long as we are doing our best to add value to the world around us, we're living a purpose-driven life and should feel a sense of satisfaction. Ideally, this concept will help shift the way we look at what most of us spend the majority of our lives doing: working. Generally speaking, work, both inside and outside of the home and both paid and unpaid, is our primary opportunity to add value to the lives of others. It is the primary way we achieve lasting satisfaction in life. If our work doesn't allow us to feel that way, we should strive to find work that does. I realize that's not a luxury available to everyone. However, if we're not presently doing exactly what we want to be doing, we can look at our current circumstances as a stepping stone to get to a place where we will find more intrinsic value. That perspective can help add meaning to what we're currently doing, even if it's not our end goal. We should, however, always keep that end goal in mind. When we can align what we work hard on with what we care deeply about, we develop passion that can drive us to accomplish incredible things. While providing something useful to the world, primarily through work, again both inside and outside of the home and both paid and unpaid, should be our purpose, it doesn't actually mean it's the most important thing we do. Recreational time spent with family is more important. Taking care of our physical and mental health is more important. Building lasting relationships with other people is more important. Those aren't the only more important things, but this small list provides an idea of the types of activities that belong in that category. It may sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth when I'm saying that being useful, primarily through work, is our purpose, and that these other things are more important. The difficulty in reconciling these seemingly conflicting statements is one of the reasons so many of us struggle to have the right balance in life. However, by setting our ability to be useful as our purpose, we first establish a base of satisfaction. We can then intentionally carve away time from our purpose for these more important things. If done right, our base facilitates all our other more important pursuits, as long as we pull ourselves away from it appropriately. When we get the balance right, we're able to make a meaningful impact on the world, create lasting social connections, and also enjoy the leisurely or pleasurable things that make life worth living. The exact balance will differ from person to person, and we should be understanding of these differences in others. However, the general rule is to spend the bulk of our time providing value to the world through work and then intentionally carving away time for the more important and pleasurable things in life. This allocation means we'll spend less time on the most important and pleasurable things, but in doing so, the very scarcity of those times ends up making them even more special.